Welcome to My Life. I'm John Oetjens, and I'm pleased to be sitting here with Marlene Mallia. Marlene is an 80-year resident of Addison Township. She's currently president of the Lakeville Cemetery Auxiliary. She was also a licensed practical nurse from the time she was 17 years of age until the mid-1990s when you retired from that. And she was also a captain on the Addison Township Fire Department for 25 years. She retired from there in the late 1990s. So she has been around here for a long time. And what I forgot to mention is that you were also on the Addison Township Election Board for 20 years.
Yes.
So dare say you know one or two people around town.
A few.
Yes. But what I always like to do on these interviews is start with stuff you're involved with right now, and you're currently president of the Lakeville Cemetery Auxiliary.
Yes.
And you have programs now and then over there, don't you?
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about some of those programs that have gone on this year and what might be coming up?
Well, we meet the third Thursday of every month, except for the winter months. And we meet at 1 o'clock at the hall in Lakeville, at the Auxiliary Hall. And we do not plan events to make money. We really plan events to get people together, just to get people together and to have a good time. We have 2 spaghetti suppers a year, and we have a program for Memorial Day in honor of our beautiful cemetery and all the veterans that are buried there. We have, last year, if I'm correct, we put out 160 flags in Lakeville Cemetery for veterans. That's a lot for that little cemetery. Our spaghetti suppers are well attended. We charge the minimum amount so we pay for our supplies. And we have one coming up in March, and that'll be the third Thursday, and I'm sorry I don't remember the date.
That's okay.
And then we'll have another one in October.
So you got one coming up pretty soon then, don't you?
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
Our sauce is all homemade. My daughter and I make the sauce.
Secret family recipe, right?
Oh, well, yes. And then, but it's very simple. It's a Sicilian sauce. Everyone seems to enjoy it. And my husband cooks all the pasta until he gets absolutely tired. But we have a good time. We have a good time doing this. I want everyone to know that we do all this just to have a good time and get together and preserve some of the history of Addison Township.
Just out of curiosity, how far back does that cemetery go? What's the oldest grave there, do you know?
Well, we celebrated 100 years. Golly, I think that was about 5 years ago.
Really? So you've got some graves that are over 100 years old there.
And as I understand it, now this is all word passed along, that the first cemetery was out on Hagerman Road, which is east of Leonard a little ways, and that they moved those persons to the Lakeville Cemetery.
Oh, really?
All of that information, by the way, is in that red book that I keep talking about.
Okay. Well, the folks out there don't know about that red book yet. What's the name of that book?
It's called the Addison Emblem.
Is that something anybody can get if they want to buy one?
Yes, they can buy. I know for sure that they can buy them at the township office.
Really?
And the last I knew, the price was $25. And it reads like a history book. It's hard to lay down once you start. And of course, we're all interested because all of our relatives are in there.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Which leads to my next question. You were born in Addison Township.
Yes.
Right? In fact, you even know what room you were born in, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You want to reveal that to the audience?
I was born in the house behind the post office. I was born on the 2nd floor in the east bedroom. My mother said I was born in December, and it was a bright, beautiful, sunny, very cold day.
You have more information than most people have about that. Is that home still there?
Oh, yes, it is.
So if they let you in, you could actually go and see that very room again.
It's been restored some. It's had a couple of owners since my mother left there, and they've done some restoring as they would like it because they're younger people, you know. Yes, yep.
Tell me how far back your family goes in Addison Township.
Oh my. My mother was born in 1899. My dad was born in Pontiac, so he and my mother, it's a second marriage for both. And my mother already lived in Leonard. She'd always lived in Leonard. So my dad kind of moved in with her when they got married.
What about her parents?
Her parents? I didn't know them, but this is the story that I've gotten over the years. My grandfather, their last name was Church. And my father went down to, we used to have we had a railroad in Leonard and a big depot and everything. And as I understand it, my grandpa went down and got on the train one day and didn't ever come back. He left her with 4 children.
Wow. So this would have been late 1800s or?
I would say early 1900s.
Early 1900s.
Yep. And I have a cousin who was really, really smart. And he was on a scholarship for the University of Michigan. That's how he went through school. And he was in Chicago. I don't know what year this was. And he was swimming in a swim meet. And a man came up to him, an old man came up to him with a gray beard and said, "You know you and I have the same last name?" My cousin said, "Is that right?" Being friendly. And he said, "I think we're probably related because I was from Pontiac, Michigan." And my cousin went and tried to find him later and he was gone. That was the only and last communication we ever had with that man.
Wow.
Yep. So here was my grandma with 4 children to raise.
What do you know about your grandfather's roots? Where did he come from? You said he was from Pontiac.
Yeah, my dad was born and raised in Pontiac. His heritage is Germany. And I have a nephew who has done that
Family history.
family history. I've read it, but I don't have a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot I don't know.
Mm-hmm. How far back do you think your family goes before you'd have to look into the old country's records?
Oh dear, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really do not know.
What was the occupation of your parents?
My dad, as just about everybody, he met my mother while he was working in the bakery in Rochester, the home bakery in Rochester. But he was a widower with 2 children. My mother was a widow with 4 children. And they met through my uncle. My uncle introduced them, and they got married and had me.
So was your dad a baker?
Well, sort of. He's kind of a jack of all trade, but his occupation, he was a master mechanic, and he worked at General Motors.
I see.
And that was his job. He was the last person that saw whatever before it went out the door.
Okay.
But he was killed tragically in a car accident the year I was married, 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved him. He was a good dad. He was a good daddy.
Do you know what your grandparents did for a living or not?
No, I never, the only grandparent I knew was my grandma. She lived in Pontiac, and her name was not Schlussler, it was Ladebusch. Mm-hmm. Very German name. Wonderful lady who played the piano. Yeah.
What year was it, do you recall what year it was that your dad and mom got married, and at that time did they move out here to Addison or?
No, they were married in 1930.
Okay.
My mother already lived there. So my dad came out and they got married and he moved in with her.
So he relocated from Pontiac to Addison?
Yes.
Okay. So what did he start doing for a living once he got out there?
I don't know for sure. I don't know if he went to work in the factory after he quit the bakery or not, but I would assume that's what happened.
Okay. I want to talk to you about your early life in Addison Township, but we need to take a break right now, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to My Life. We're here with Marlene Mallia, and where we left off, we were talking about right around the time that you were born in Addison Township, and we were giving a little bit of the history of your family. And by the way, at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about the Addison Township Cemetery spaghetti dinner. That's really in April, not March, they tell me. Is that correct?
Oh, Lord, I messed up.
Don't want you to miss it, so mark that on your calendar.
I'll be there. I'll be cooking.
Okay, so you were born in Leonard, and obviously that's where you would have started school,
Yes,
right? What school did you go to at
the
first?
Leonard Elementary School, and the 6th generation of our family is going there right now.
Is that right?
That's right.
Is it, well, I'm familiar with the school itself. I mean, obviously that couldn't have been the same exact building back then.
The original building is still there.
Is it?
It is. And not when you go in the back in the parking lot, but when you're in the front by the street. That was the original building
Oh,
of the Leonard School. I'm not sure when it was built. There were 2 schools before that. They burned down. The second one burned with the fire engine in the basement.
no kidding.
Yes. Yes, it did.
How would the fire engine have been in the basement?
I don't know. But I know that my mother attended there when it burned.
Really? Was your class very large?
Her class?
Yours?
My class? Oh, no. Probably less than 15.
So it was very small then.
Very small.
Yeah, so everybody knew each other pretty well, didn't they?
Yes. So then after we could only go there for 9 grades by the time I got that far. And then we had to finish. We had a choice of going to Oxford or going to Elmont.
Oh.
And I chose to go to Elmont because all my friends were going there. Yep.
What was one of your favorite things to do as a child?
As a child?
Yeah.
Pretend. I made up things. I had paper dolls, and I cut them out of the newspaper or whatever I could find. And then I'd make up stories about them. And I put on plays and everything. But that was my favorite thing to do.
Did your folks admire your creativity?
Yes. I think my mother and dad had learned by then that whatever happened, happened, you know. And my 4th grade school teacher, who was Mrs. Elwell, a really well-known person in this area, she told my parents that I was either going to be an actress or something in the medical field. And I don't remember when I was that young of doing anything in that line. So I don't know where she came up with that.
Wow.
But we did that in school. We made up plays. She'd let us take a story out of a favorite book and make up plays. And she thought I was very creative because I created a staircase out of books. And we walked on them in the coat room. I can remember doing that.
Now we should point out that you're the youngest of
7 children.
7 children. How many brothers and sisters?
3 brothers and 3 sisters.
So did you put on plays for them?
No, they were kind of put up with me by then. And my brothers all were drafted into the Army. My last brother to go, I was 10 years old. And my brothers all went in the Army. My sisters married young. Seemed like everyone did then. They were probably 18 when they were married. So all of a sudden, I was an only child. I was so frightened of being home alone that I never slept alone. We had the upstairs where I was born. We had 3 girls in one bedroom, 3 boys in the other bedroom, and I slept downstairs with my parents in their bedroom. So when they all left me, I got to have my own bedroom upstairs. And I cried every night. My dad had to come and put me to sleep every night.
Seemed kind of strange, didn't it, to
It was
have all that
strange.
room?
Very strange. And that house seemed so big, but it wasn't really.
Did your brothers and sisters move far away?
No,
Or-
none of them did.
Yeah.
Eventually, I had one brother that ended up in Tucson, Arizona, and one brother that ended up in Texas. He had a lot to do with the space program.
Really?
He helped put the first man on the moon. I like that story because it's so true.
Absolutely. What was the age difference between you and your oldest sibling?
17 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you find that they covered up for you a lot through the years because you were the youngest?
Oh, yeah. They were very bossy, and if I got in trouble, then they always stuck up for me. That's how I end up being very spoiled.
Did you play any sports in grade school? I don't know if they had any.
Baseball, everybody played ball.
Uh-huh.
We ice skated a lot in the winter and would find the tallest hill, which we thought was very high, and it's not really, that we sledded down, you know. I never skied, but I sledded down. We walked to Lakeville to go swimming only after our work was done and our chores were done.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt lived on, she was a Beza, she lived on Beza Street. She raised raspberries and strawberries. So we'd work all morning to get enough money to go to Lakeville to swim all afternoon. Then we would go stand out on Rochester Road, and the first person that knew us would pick us up and bring us all back home. Yeah, you couldn't do that today.
No, back then you
couldn't do that.
A little more trust, huh?
Right. Yeah.
And your folks didn't even get angry at you for doing that?
No, absolutely not. And then my daddy and Charlie Sotheby used to take turns taking my best friend roller skating in Pontiac, or Lake Orion first. Then that roller rink burned down and we had to go to Pontiac. But if we talked real sweet talked them about once a month, they'd take us roller skating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this would have been roughly what year that you were growing?
In the 40s. In the 40s.
In the early 40s. So this would have been around the time of World War II.
Yes, it was that time.
What was going through your minds as you heard about World War II on the radio every day?
My mother and dad were very active in community things. And I remember my dad every Sunday afternoon went up to school, and they had built a tower. And he went up there with binoculars and watched for planes. Now, I have found out since that they were Japanese planes, and they actually did fly over Leonard. And it could have been a big problem. And then I remember my mother and all the other ladies in Leonard packing boxes, and they used popcorn to pack the boxes, to send the boxes away to all the young men that left Leonard.
Right.
To go to be in the war.
Now, it was right around that time that were a couple of your brothers involved with the war?
3.
3 brothers were?
All 3 of my brothers. I think my mother was a very brave woman to have all of her sons go off to war. My one brother, Mike, went away and didn't come home for 5 years. And their letters were email letters. Are you familiar with those letters?
Why don't you describe them?
Well, they're small little letters, and they were like tissue paper. And when Mama would get it, they'd take a pen or something and black out everything. So essentially all it said was, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay. Love you both. Bye."
Wow.
One letter that they just gave to my sister-in-law, because we just celebrated her 90th birthday. They gave her a letter from my brother Mike, and it said, "I hope Marlene is still taking piano lessons. She can play for me when I come home." How about that?
Wow. All right, we have to take a little break right now, but we'll come back and talk more about this in just a moment.
Yeah.
Back with Marlene Mallia. We were just talking about your brothers in World War II.
Yes.
Those must have been tense times from day to day, worrying about their welfare during that time.
I was too young to really worry about it. There was only the things like we didn't have chocolate. I remember in school, and I've asked other ones about it, they don't remember that. We had a it wasn't lunchtime, it was a break. And we got these little cans of pork and beans and little cans of fruit. And I guess they decided we were going to be malnourished, so they were feeding us in school. Because otherwise we had to take our lunch. We took sack lunches, you know, and we ate in the basement at the school for lunch. But it was a tough time for my parents. But for me, life went on, you know.
Were you able to walk to school?
Oh, yeah.
You were close
We
enough.
always walked to school, yeah.
Did you think much then about what you wanted to do when you grew up?
No. I just knew that grade 12 was not the end of my education because my parents wouldn't allow it. You had to have something else you were going to do.
Now, so your parents encouraged furthering your education.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Very important.
Had either of them gone on to college?
No. No. My mother, she finished the 10th grade. So does my dad. They both finished the 10th grade, and that was as far as they went in school.
I see.
So,
And you told me earlier that you went to Almont.
I went to Almont School. Yes,
and
I
you
did.
decided that because that's where your friends decided to go.
That's right. Then I got to ride the bus, too.
Well, yeah, because Almont isn't nearly as close.
No.
So was that a very large school?
No, not really. I think there probably was, if I remember right, there were 27 in my graduating class.
27.
Yes.
Were there any sports activities or
yes.
extracurricular things you could belong to?
Everything we have now. Everything.
Really?
But one thing we have that they didn't have, they don't have now is home ec and farmers, what was that called? FFA, farmers something. Anyway, the boys all took that because we had live animals. We had cows and pigs and lambs and all those things in school. So instead of working on cars like the young people do now, that's what they did.
Your parents were not involved in farming, though, were they?
No, not at all.
So you didn't have any of that to deal with at home?
No. My mother's first husband was a farmer. Yeah.
So what year did you graduate from high school?
1953.
53. So as you were going through high school, World War II was done with. And by the way, your brothers all made it back okay.
Yes, they did.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
But the Korean War was going during some of that time. So what was going through your mind about where your life was headed when you graduated from high school?
In those eras, you graduated from high school and got married and had children. That's what was expected.
That's just what everybody did.
That's right. That's what was expected of you. My two oldest sisters did exactly that. But my third sister married Jerry Wright, and he was in the service when she married him, you know. But that's what we did then. We graduated from school and got married, had children. Yep. So that's all that was really expected of me, actually, except that we were expected to find something else to do with our lives. Yeah.
Now, you started your LPN training at age 17.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we had to go down and be interviewed with my parents.
What made you decide that, though, in the
My
first
sister
place?
decided.
Oh,
She
did.
decided this is what I would do. She read it in the Pontiac paper. And she thought that's what Marlene should do.
So she saw an ad.
She saw an ad. So down we went to the nurses' home. They apparently were impressed that I belonged to the National Honor Society and that I had the brains to get through this schooling because it was a new program and it was very intense.
Where was this at?
This was in Pontiac at St. Joe's Hospital.
St. Joe's.
Yes, it was very intense. And we didn't have much time to get in trouble. It was a Catholic hospital, Catholic school run by nuns. I was a Protestant. That was new to me. I had to go to church every morning. I had to go to Mass. Didn't hurt me a bit. My mother and dad knew that. And the nuns, you could hear the flutter of their habits when we had to leave we lived there in a dorm, and we had to leave our doors open all the time. We could hear them.
What order of nuns were there? Do you remember?
Mercy.
Okay.
Yep.
Sisters of Mercy.
Sisters of Mercy. Wonderful.
How long was that program?
Just 13 months.
You have any particular outstanding memory about your time there with the sisters and so forth?
Well, for one thing, I had never seen a man naked in my life. That was a surprise.
We're not talking about in the residence hall now, we're talking about in your training.
That's right. And, oh golly, we were part of the Sister Kenny program because the polio season started during that time.
Right.
And our Sister Mary Janice, who was our head nun, she had had polio as a child. She walked with a limp, wore a brace. We were taught to take care of all those persons with polio.
This was right before the Salk vaccine came out, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
When I was pregnant for my son, that vaccine came out because the doctor gave all of his patients the vaccine while we were pregnant, not knowing, of course, what that was going to do.
Right.
He insisted on Jean getting it also because he was also giving it to the husbands, that vaccine. But we took care of patients in iron lungs. We had one doctor in an iron lung. He did live. I saw one young man come in there that I knew his parents. Took care of him. He didn't make it. We had a mother come in. She contracted right on the delivery table. I worked in pediatrics. She contracted this during delivery. We had that baby in our little nursery and took care of that baby. The baby made it, but the mother died.
From polio.
From polio.
My goodness.
Horrible times. Horrible.
Did you spend your whole nursing career at St. Joe's?
No. I left there after I got married and went to Crittenton downtown for a short time. And then Jean and I moved to Detroit when we got married. That was my short time away from Leonard. And when we moved back to Leonard, I couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand it. First of all, I saw a cockroach. I'd never seen one of those in my whole life. But we moved back to Leonard, so I went back to St. Joe's then. I left there when I was pregnant for my second child. By that time, Elmont Hospital had opened, Little Elmont Hospital.
Yeah. I want to talk to you more about your nursing career and also about your family life. But unfortunately, we run out of time for this segment, so we'd like to invite our viewers to come back for a second episode with Marlene Mallia as we delve into those subjects. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
This is OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford and Addison Townships with the best in local programming. On Charter Channel 191, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and our website, OCCTV.org. OCTV, we provide local programming that brings you closer to home.